7 phrases that will make people like you right away. Watch this video because it will help you talk to people better. In linguistics, phatic speech is an opening phrase or question that is meant to help people get to know each other. Unfortunately, the phatic conversation starter that makes people feel the most uncomfortable is one we use a lot: how are you? Most people say great or fine, even if their lives aren't fine at all. We know that the person who asks isn't interested in our lives. Small talk is all they do to pass the time. They don't want to be heard. You might think that people who listen well are more likable, but study after study has shown that the opposite is true. We like people who talk more than they listen. Researchers called this idea that quiet people are easier to get along with the reticence bias. They thought that we like people who talk more than people who listen because when we talk about our personalities, it brings us closer together. In other words, we can't get close to someone if we don't find things we have in common. Even though opposites can be interesting, they rarely stay together. The researchers did find that people who talked 90% of the time were not as popular. About 70% of the time, you should be talking, and 30% of the time, you should be listening. Dale Carnegie once said, "The people you're talking to are 100 times more interested in themselves than they are in you." This study shows that this is not true. Maybe the best way to win friends and influence people isn't to always listen, but to get others to listen to you. Great talkers know that a little heat melts the wax and shapes once. Here are a few phrases and questions that have been shown to bring people closer together. I feel so embarrassed. If you fall on your face with your skirt flying over your head, your face is sure to get red. Not a personal reference, maybe. But your mistakes make you more likable, even if they make you feel like a gangly human. Studies show that a person is easier to like when they say they are embarrassed. It's easy to understand why. Researchers found that we trust embarrassed people. Feeling embarrassed shows that you are weak, and being weak makes you more real. But there may be another reason why we think being embarrassed is a sign of being real. We can't hide the nonverbal signs of embarrassment, which makes it the only emotion we can't hide. We can force ourselves to smile, stop crying, or calm down, but we can't stop our cheeks from getting red. Embarrassment is deeply human. Reality also matches how people feel about being embarrassed. In one study, researchers found that people who were more likely to feel embarrassed were also more likely to be kind and friendly. Embarrassed people are more likable because they care about other people. Perfectionism is the opposite of being ashamed. Perfectionism can help us reach our goals, but it can also hold us back. If we are always afraid of failing, we never learn from our mistakes and grow as people. Sadly, being embarrassed is often a painful part of failing. But many people think wrongly that their flaws make them unlovable. It's the belief that your flaws make you unlovable that makes you less attractive. These beliefs keep you locked up in fears that make other people avoid you. So, if you make a mistake, fall on your face, or say something stupid, say, "I'm so embarrassed," and then smile or laugh. If you don't worry too much about your mistakes, no one else will either. May I sense? Ellen Langer, a researcher at Harvard, did the famous copier machine study in the 1970s. In this experiment, an actor was asked to cut in front of a line of people waiting to use a copier. Langer had the actor ask 3 times to cut the line. A. Excuse me, I have 5 pages. Can I use the photocopier? B. Excuse me, I have 5 pages. I need to make copies, so can I use the Xerox machine? C. Excuse me, I have 5 pages. I'm in a hurry and would like to use the Xerox machine. The results shocked everyone. Only 60% of the time did people say yes to A request. B and C, on the other hand, were met 93% and 94% of the time. Researchers did this experiment several times and got results that were pretty close to the same each time. They thought that the word because makes people do what they want because our brains always want to know why we do something, even if the reason is simple and obvious. This is what we should do. In our self-centered culture, It might seem strange that influential people are more likely to use we pronouns than I, me, or my. However, psychologist James Pennebaker found that leaders are more likely to use we pronouns because they are more interested in other people. When you think about it, it makes sense. People who aren't sure of themselves worry more about how other people will see them, so they talk more about themselves. Even creepier, when Pennebaker looked at poems by people who had killed themselves, he found that the word I was used most often. In other words, insecure people tend to be self-centered, while people who are emotionally intelligent look for connections. Another study backs up these results. Researchers found that the more someone used first-person singular pronouns like I, me, and my, the more likely they were to have health and mental problems. Even more interesting is that liars are less likely to use pronouns that refer to the first-person singular. Researchers think that people who are lying don't use the word I because they don't want to take responsibility for their actions. If you ask your husband, "Where were you last night?" and he says, "Went to the game" instead of "I went to the game," he might be trying to hide the truth. When you argue with your partner, it's also important to use we. We means that you and the other person are working together to solve the problem. Researchers even found that divorce rates were lower, and couples were happier when they used more cooperative pronouns, we, our, us, than first-person singular pronouns I, me, and you. For example, if you want your husband to take out the trash, it's better to say "We need to take out the trash" than "You need to take out the trash." Both will probably get the job done, but the first will make him feel less like your domestic slave and more like a teammate. May I ask you? When you ask permission, the other person feels better. This way of talking is used by people who work in fundraising. Instead of asking, "Can you donate to this cause?" they ask, "Can I ask you to donate to this cause?" The first question, "Can I ask you something?" also works well when you're talking about a tough subject and want the other person to say more. Asking for permission to ask might sound weaker in some situations, but it softens hard questions that could be seen as offensive. I am curious. One of the best ways to get someone to like you is to make them curious. When you start a question with "I'm interested," it shows that you want to know more. We like people who start by wanting to understand instead of judging. Erin N. Reeves, PhD, a best-selling author, explains why curiosity makes the conversation more interesting. Your brain can't hold both curiosity and bias at the same time. The moment you say, "I'm interested in this," your brain stops putting in a bias. Erin N. Reeves, PhD. So, the next time you want to start a debate, you might get more honest answers if you say, "I'm interested. Please tell me what to do." There are no dumb questions is a saying we've all heard, but new research shows that it's true. In this study, the researchers found that asking for advice made a person look smarter. People liked the people who asked for advice more because they felt honored to be asked. Simply put, it feels good to answer a question that helps someone. In her book Captivate, The Science of Succeeding with People, social scientist Vanessa Van Edwards found that people who ask for advice are seen as weaker. And that makes the person who asks and the person who answers trust each other more. Please help me. It can be scary to ask for help, but the meek are the ones who get the earth when they do. The Benjamin Franklin effect is a name for this effect of being liked. It was named after a time when Franklin won over one of his enemies. The name of his enemy is not known. This person kept talking bad about Franklin behind his back, but Franklin didn't hit him with his beaver hat. Instead, he asked for a favor. And it wasn't something small. He asked the hater if he could borrow a book from his library. At the time, books were rare, so only close friends and family could borrow them. The person who hated Franklin agreed and sent the book to him. When they finally met, they became the best of friends. The Benjamin Franklin effect tricks our brains into thinking that we are helping someone because we like them. In other words, what we think comes after what we do. I love you. Margot Mackle Bisnow, who wrote the book Raising an Entrepreneur, talked to the parents of 70 very successful adults to find out what words of encouragement they used most with their kids. She found that smart parents often said "I love you" to their even smarter kids. Bisnow found that even when a child failed, they felt accepted by their parents who were always happy. So, that feeling of being accepted led to higher accomplishments. So, you don't want to pour your heart out to a stranger or a new love interest, but telling your friends, family, and partner that you love them makes them feel safe and appreciated. People are more likely to love others when they feel loved themselves.